Welcome to Now and Forever, a series of 10-minute reflections on good news spirituality, sponsored by the Charles and Catherine Free Family Foundation, which is headquartered in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, incidentally, and brought to you from Our Lady of the Sacred Heart Parish here in Watertown, New York. With me, as usual, is Vicki, and oh yeah, you were at choir practice, okay, and Pat. Pat, good evening.
Good evening, Father.
Okay, now we're going on with this whole thing of family evangelization, and I'm going to start this off, this first paragraph, because it reminds me of when I used to give high school retreats. This is right along that line. So here we go. If parents haven't adopted the custom of gathering for family prayer while their children are still young, they will probably feel uneasy about introducing the practice years later when their children are already in their teens. There's no easy way to do this, especially with youngsters who are dealing with the typical issues tied to young adolescents. These include a growing awareness of their individuality and a drive for emancipation and self-determination. They don't want to be told, hey, it's time to pray. At a deeper level, however, young people as well as children are not adverse to prayer once they experience its benefits and realize that it is an answer to many of their uncertainties and more urgent needs. So how do you go about getting over that uneasiness about introducing the practice?
I don't know. I made a terrible mistake in my life with a young family because we didn't pray as a family. We prayed individually, but we never prayed as a family.
Oh my.
And so when we talked about this off screen here a couple weeks ago, it kind of bothered me that I'd never done that. And so I think we've got to give ourselves, we've got to start with young couples that are having children and introduce it to them, okay?
Yeah.
And I think we have to do, we've got to let little kids see things that will remind them to pray. And us adults too. So, the crucifix in the house. Okay, we bantied around ideas about, at Christmas we have the creche in the house, and everybody always marvels out how beautiful it is. But what else could we do at other times of the year, the very important times of the year, like Lent? Is there a shrine or a setting that we could have in the house that would remind all of us, to say that momentary prayer? And I'd like to say I did that, and I didn't, and it's
And you have to let them participate. You have to let them have hands-on from when they're little, and participate.
Yeah, in the last,
and make them feel important, and
You have to light the candle and that sort of thing. Yeah. And blow it out too. I always like to blow out the candle.
But we had this is a conversation we have in confirmation is about praying. In the last couple of years, one of our leaders, that's been her goal to make sure we have a whole program, at least one, if not one or two programs, on prayer, in the different types of prayer, in the self-prayer, the prayer that you do,
the original,
your connection, your personal. Try to make it a personal connection, not just out of the book. You do have to know your Hail Marys, your Our Fathers, but the prayer that's a conversation with God.
But the other, one of the things I try to do and still do, because I have the reflection in the Our Father, and the Our Father is such that you can make it a very personal prayer.
Oh, absolutely.
In fact, if you don't make it a personal prayer, you've just lost the whole thing. Because that's Jesus' prayer. It's Him talking to the Father.
Yeah.
And you couldn't find a more personal prayer than the Our Father. It's just perfect. It covers the whole field. But it helps for that. If you say the Our Father well, then in fact, Teresa of Avila says that's the way to contemplation. That's what, just saying the Our Father is, you can get into contemplation.
Absolutely.
But it helps your other prayer too, a spontaneous prayer, very, very much.
And the other thing is in my generation, you were always pushed to go to the church for prayer instead of, you could pray in the car. You could pray anywhere if you had the right
understanding of prayer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, see, I thought I had enough prayers because I went all through Catholic school, so we prayed first thing. Many of the classes, they started with the sign of the cross. Then you played sports, they had the prayer before the game. We even had masses before the games.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so we had all this praying going on, but you never really appreciated it because you really didn't you were never.
You didn't own it.
You didn't own it. That's right.
Yeah.
You participated, and I don't think there was any ill effect from it.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice to know. Really.
Like what you're saying, Vicki, to get to more participation.
Yeah.
We actually have different people taking a leading role. But it's, all prayer is presence to God. And that's why the Our Father is so good, because it's Our Father. Right away, you're into the presence of God. And I don't care whether it's contemplative prayer, unitive prayer, vocal prayer, private prayer, whatever prayer, centering prayer. It all depends on you being present to God. And I gave a retreat one time where it was mostly on that, and what I concentrated on was, you can't be in touch with God unless you're in contact with yourself. And so that really prayer means bringing that self-awareness that you have as an adult, not self-consciousness, but self-awareness, that you're bringing yourself into the presence of God. And then that brings your whole self, everything, body, soul, mind, everything. And that I've stressed that for quite a bit. We better get on with this. Vicki, why don't you take that next paragraph there? Hey, we got to roll that down a bit. How we go? That's it. How we go about? Right there. Vicki, take it off.
How do you go about?
Yes.
How do you go about acquainting them with the benefits of prayer? By example. This goes for grandparents too. If they've conscripted to babysit or to have the grandkids for an overnight, all you have to do is let it be known that you have a time for prayer, and everyone in the family is welcome to attend. It helps if you have a designated spot for the prayer.
There you go, Pat.
Yep.
It may be a corner in the living room, at one end of the dining room, or in front of the fireplace. Ways in which to create this kind of sacred space include making it a place of honor for the family Bible, arranging for the enthronement of the Sacred Heart in the home, creating a simple Marian shrine, gathering before a crucifix, and lighting candles at the time of prayer.
That's excellent.
Very good. How about that? You could have written that.
I could. I didn't, but I could have. But I like those ideas.
Yeah.
That's funny. They talk about grandparents. My father was a big guy for doing the rosary.
Yes.
Okay, so he would always listen to Mother Angelica, and oftentimes he would pick Alicia and Ryan up from school.
Yeah.
And so he always did his rosary around 4 o'clock or whatever. And so if you went into the house, the three of them would be in the front room doing the rosary.
Yeah.
And but if I happened to come over to the house and he's doing the rosary, he'd hit the TV and turn it off. And I said, yeah, no, you don't have to do that. He says, don't worry. He goes, I got something to talk to you about. He says, but I have this on the VCR tape. He goes, I'll just start this right up again when you leave. So he had his spot. Okay, he had his routine, but he included his grandchildren in it when he did it. It was that important to him.
Very good. All right, I don't know, we don't have our timekeeper here, but I think we're still okay. All right, Pat, why don't you do that last one? Then we just talk until it's time to go.
Okay, we live in a world filled with change, uncertainty, threat, violence, noise, haste, etc. According to recent reports, this is filling our young people with anxiety, apprehension, especially young girls who have no father in the home.
I remember that now.
Saying prayers in common and out loud is quieting and reassuring. It is a lot more beneficial than drugs. Not to introduce prayer to home leaves the children at risk in more ways than one. Don't wait until next week to introduce your family prayer. Start it right now.
Oh, very good. I remember hearing about that, because there was a time when young girls were reaching the age of puberty or fertility at 9, and they found out that it was happened when there was not a man in the house. That there's a higher degree of insecurity or
anxiety
and such. I read this in some book on psychology. I did study a lot of psychology, but when I read that, I thought, well, that's interesting because. I could see why it's so. The way the body works is it's always under stress, and that, hastens up things to make sure somebody's going to survive. Should be darned. So that's right. Look at that, a world filled with change, uncertainty, threat, violence, noise, haste. No wonder. I guess that's enough to make a little guy nervous.
I had a client today almost talk about this same thing about video games. How the kids and he's trying not to do this with his children, allow them to just sit there and play video games, get frustrated, and literally have a meltdown because their batteries run out or something. He goes, they have no ability. The friends come over to the house. These kids have no ability to cope with any kind of change. There's no release for them. And I'm wondering if
Wow.
prayer
Oh, yeah.
gives you that potential release.
Oh, yeah.
But-
And it does.
He says, and he's got young kids, he says, it is unbelievable the anxiety that these little kids had. He goes, the only anxiety I ever had, he said, was, if the ball hit me in the head when we were out in the yard playing, but these kids don't even play in the yard, It's all self,
I just one final thing. But when we say office, evening prayers all the time in our community, and I'm always yawning because it's just so tired to go start yawning. Hey, thanks for listening. Thanks very much for saying. We'll be back. Take care. God bless.